Okay, so today I'm going to show you how to color with our Shinhan touch markers. So these are new, too close to my heart. Let me turn it the right way up there for you. And they are amazing markers. They're alcohol markers. They have both a fine tip and a broad tip. We have 24 colors. And they're a very high quality marker. So very similar to Copic markers. They're considered top of the line as our Copic. And they color beautifully. So we carry 24 markers as well as a colorless blender, which is a great tool to have to lighten areas or to pick up ink and basically erase from areas where you may have ink that you don't want, either as much ink or the ink at all. So it really does work really well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you these markers using our August stamp of the month. So I'm working on a little project that I'll show at the very end of the video once it's complete. And in it, I have to color my little owl friend. So this is from the August stamp of the month, which is called What a Hoot. And you can mix and match your little owl and make all sorts of cute Halloween treats. I live in a neighborhood where we only get a few kids, so for me it's really easy to do this because we get 2 or 3 kids, so I can give them a nice little treat bag done up all pretty. Of course, leave my contact information inside in case their mom or dad or anybody in their family is interested in the product that I sell, and make sure that they get something really special at the door. So what I'm going to do is I already colored in the hat for my little owl, and I'm going to start working on the owl itself in a variety of colors. And I'm going to start with some greens. So I have chosen these 3 colors from our color line. So I've got sap green, leaf green, and a pastel green. And with those, I'm going to do some coloring and some shading of my owl. So I'm going to start with the lightest color first. So I've watched a lot of different tutorials. By no means am I trained in anything special to do this, but I'm going to start with the green on my owl. So a lot of the video tutorials that I watched recommended coloring with lightest to darkest. So I'm just going to go around, and I think this comes from my days of coloring as a kid. I always feel best if I do the outline first. So I'm just going to go around where I'm going to color. Now these markers are very, not juicy, but they're wet. Like, they've got some good ink coverage to them. So I also like to use my fine tip where possible because I'm always afraid of bleeding. The colors will blend seamlessly on this as they begin to dry. You don't have to worry about that. That's one of the benefits of using alcohol markers. But I feel best if I know that my fine areas are outlined and all done before I come in and I use the broad tip. You might think the broad tip is a bit of an odd choice. Why wouldn't they go with paintbrush tip for these markers? But in actuality, you get a lot more freedom with the broad tip than you may think you do. So don't fret, they're really not that bad. So there you can see I've got the basic lightest color, the pastel green, done on my owl. I'm going to come in and I'm going to do some shading. Again, I'm going to start with the fine tip, and I'm just going to shade along here, wherever I think my owl needs some shading. Now again, the colors are going to blend all on their own, and I can certainly help them along with that a bit later. And I'm going to leave it at that. So this might look pretty strange if you're watching at this point, but I am going to come in and I'm going to do some more coloring. And it'll pull it all together, I promise, by the end. So now I'm going to go in with my darker green. So you can see right there what that looks like. So I've got that color. Let me go back and I'll show you what we've got going on. That was the first color. And then this was the mid color. So if you start to overlap those colors, so there's some overlap on those 2. And then right in the center, some overlap on those 2. You start to get some shading that's going on. So it'll be light. It'll be not crazy obvious, but I can play around with it until I get the look I want. So don't judge my coloring. It's kind of nerve-wracking doing this on camera. So I'm just going to go around And I'm going to do what I did earlier, where I'm just going to do my outline of my owl, where I'm going to color him green. And then I'm just going to color it in. No right or wrong way. They are alcohol markers. So as long as you're getting between the lines, you're all good. And even then, if you get out of the lines, you can get the colorless blender and come back into play. So I've done lightest to darkest. I did my mid color, and I only did it in the areas that I wanted to shade. And now I'm just going to give it some time to dry. It doesn't take very long. And then I can bring back this lightest color, and I'm just going to go over some of the areas that I really wanted some shading. Now, once upon a time, when I heard about doing coloring, and they talked about shading, they always talked about making sure your shading was to one side, as if the sun was coming along and reflecting onto your subject, the side that the shadow would fall on. So I've got all my shadows following on this side for my shading. That may be incorrect, but that's how I interpret it. So as you can see, what I'm doing right now is I've got the colorless blender, and I had a little bit of ink that came over onto his face. So I've just removed that so that his face remains as it was. And I think I'm going to leave the green as it is. So there's, it's easier to see if you're actually looking at it, but there's a little bit of variation. If I wanted to, I can come back in with my darkest green, and I can keep going over it. And I can just go down. And I can just add some shadow as I feel the need. So it's really just up to personal preference and the look you want. And I can totally see some lighter patches now along with some darker patches, which gives some variation to the owl. So now I'm going to go in with some purple. It's Halloween. Purple's fun. And in this case, to show you just slight difference, I'm going to start with the darker color first. So this is Lavender, which is a really gorgeous purple. And I'm coloring this big area. So I'm going to start with the fine tip, but I'm definitely going to switch to the broad tip because it'll help me cover much quicker this wide area. And as you can see, I'm getting really great coverage fairly fast. And the colors are all blending in. So I went over quite a few times and I got a lot of layers going on, and the colors are all blending as we speak. So now I'm going to come in with some peony purple, and I'm just going to add some shading, kind of in the same way I added it a second ago on the bigger part of my owl. Now, if I wanted to, I could come back over with the darker, and in the purples you can really notice the shading that I have going on. And I'm going to go over again with the dark. Except this time I'm going to go all the way over. So I went dark, light, dark. But I can still see where that lighter patch was to give some shading to my owl. So I really like what's going on here. It is really personal preference, but I'm really liking it. So I'm going to get some browns now because we've got to color his legs. And I'm just going. So once his legs are finished, and I mean they're stick legs, so there's really not a lot of variation. All right, so all I have left is his mask area, and I'm going to use some oranges for that. So I've got 3 colors here. I've got the light orange, the marigold, and the golden yellow, and I'm going to use those to do the mask area on my owl. And I'm going to finish the mask, and what I've colored it in so far with is my light orange, and now I'm going to go to the next shade of, which is golden yellow, and I'm just going to add again some variation. And I'm actually going to color his eyes in the yellow as well. Good color for an owl's eyes, I think. So I'm just going to go on in there. Now I did stamp, I never did talk about this, I stamped my outer image in just our regular black ink. We're recommended to use archival, but I find the regular black works really well, and I've never had any bleeding or any issues, and other ones I have. So I'm sticking with what works well for me, and that is our regular Close to My Heart black ink. So now I'm coming in with the Marigold, which is the darkest of our orange, and I'm just going to go around his mask. I'm going to leave his eyes. Oh, I got a little bit of a boo-boo, so I'm going to have to go back with my colorless blender. And then I'm going to bring back the light orange that I used for the earlier shading. That was my first color. And I'm just going to add some bits. And then I'm going to clean up the little bit of a mess I made there. So there's my colorless blender, and I'm just coming along, and it picks up and takes away the ink. So your image looks pretty much flawless and as you expect it to be. So I love how it turned out. I can totally see the variation. I don't know if it's as obvious to you on the camera, but lighter patches of green, darker things over here. And now I'm going to put it all together, take a photo, and show you my finished project.